Trauma. Everyone has it. No one talks about it. It seems easier to stay silent, ignore it, or stuff it than it does to honor it, learn from it, and finally heal. Trauma is debilitating, yet so often we suffer in silence. Trauma is not meant to be battled alone, and we are no longer going to suffer in silence. Together, we are creating a safe place to speak, to share our stories, and grow our strength as we heal. Together, we are giving a voice to those who have been silenced, bringing darkness into light, and letting God use our stories. Today, we find ourselves again. We relight our spark and let it light up the world. Stop SIS is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating on issues of trauma and trafficking, as well as the amazing power of the healing journey. Welcome to Stop SIS. Hey, you guys. Big welcome back to Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh, and I'm here with co-host Rachel Timothy.
Hey, guys.
And we are planning to just have a conversation today about what is currently happening in Rachel's world, because I think you will benefit from this discussion and maybe even add to it. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments on our Instagram, wherever, to hear what you think about these subjects as well. But before we dive in, Rachel, how's life? Tell me what you've been up to this week.
Well, I got to speak this week with a group of social workers, about 65 plus people, people who are constantly working with children who are, not in great places. And just getting to have a conversation with them, share with them my story, share with them the things I've learned. And then I got to hear a little bit from them. And, one thing I found was a lot of them have their own stories. One of them had been trafficked. One of them came on and said, she was a sexual abuse survivor. And she knows that several others on the screen were too. It was all through Zoom. And there was a lot of emotions. And so I was picking up on the fact that a lot of them probably went into that field because they wanted to be for a child what they didn't have as a kid, which is profound. But in another sense, how difficult. Like you could just see the emotions.
Right. And I think especially if someone hasn't necessarily worked through their own trauma, to add on that secondary trauma of seeing other kids in dangerous situations and working in a system that's often broken and isn't as helpful as you'd wish it would be. I wonder how challenging that is.
Yeah, you could see. And one of them, she only talked for maybe a minute, but she did say, she was a survivor, and she made it very clear that her perpetrator never did receive the justice that he deserved. And it just makes you wonder how much of that lays heavy on their heart too, whenever they're going in and seeing these kids and talking with them.
Yeah. And then I know you also got to meet one of your daughters for lunch.
I did. Actually, I did two. I only posted about one of them, but one neat thing about our school is we get to go in and have lunch with our kids whenever we want to, really. Last year and the year before, because of COVID, they didn't have it, but now parents are welcome back in. And so I picked up a Subway pizza for one girl one day. I picked up Chick-fil-A for the other girl, just whatever they liked, and then sat in the cafeteria and they pointed out their friends and they told me all about their life there at school. It was just special. I got 4 kids, so when you have that one-on-one time, it's super cool. And I learned that from you. You have started doing those date days with your boys.
It's amazing, actually, the conversations that come about when you're one-on-one. Really, I have 2 boys, and when we're all in the car and they banter back and forth to each other, it's just different than when we're one-on-one and we're talking. Even if we're not having a deep conversation, I feel like having the space, like it's not weird to talk to me, I think is huge.
Yeah.
And after meeting with the other youth group leaders a couple weeks ago and learning that if my child is having a tough time with something, they won't necessarily come and tell me. I thought, I can't be sure that teachers wouldn't tell me or other parents wouldn't tell me. And so I can't control the whole environment, but what I can do is work to have the best relationship with my kids as possible. So if they are having a hard time, they will feel comfortable telling me. And I remember I went one-on-one with my parents one time.
Really?
Well, one time I went out to dinner with my parents, just the three of us, and I remember it because it was special and unique. And I remember telling them stories and telling them things, and they just got a kick out of me. And they thought, I remember that. And then another time, my dad and I went to see a movie, just the two of us.
Oh, fun.
But I thought the fact that I remember means that it was important to me and it was different and unique, and I want it to be normal.
Yeah. Yeah. You want conversation with your kids to be normal. So when the hard stuff comes, it is a normal thing to tell you.
I heard somebody talk about in like a marriage counseling thing once. They were like, here's my tip, talk about everything. Because if you can easily talk about your day, if you can easily talk about the little stuff, if you are just in the habit of talking, when something hard happens, you'll be in the habit of talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So yes, and having that one-on-one time with your girls is really special. And something you got to reflect on was that you might not have done that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, or I would have done it, but my headspace would have been somewhere else. And I was able to really just be in the moment and enjoy it and not be thinking, okay, when I go out to my car, is somebody going to be watching? Or, am I going to be unsafe on the way home? Or yeah, you're right. I wouldn't have gone at all because I wouldn't have felt safe enough to leave the house. Um, so a lot is changing, and I think they're picking up on it too. My kids seem lighter, like in their being, less anxiety, less stress. And I think that's a reflection of I am less anxiety, I am less stressed.
Yeah, because they pick up on it. They're a bit like animals in that way. If your animals are anxious, it's often a reflection of you. They're kind of absorbing what you are emoting, and kids are similar to that. They can tell even if they don't have the words for it.
Yeah, I agree. And even though I tried to shelter them from everything that I possibly could, they could feel what I was feeling through all those years. And so, yeah.
And you even did a post this week about playing Barbies.
I know, right? Which probably doesn't seem like a big deal, but I still like Barbies, naked Barbies, I cannot do. If I see them, I am in a flashback. And my girls know that. Like they have known that from the moment they were itty bitty. If mom sees one, it's going in the trash. Like, do not take the clothes off the Barbies. Luckily, nowadays they make Barbies where they have swimsuits underneath them, and that helps. And so most of our Barbies have a painting of some sort on them. I don't know, like I guess I do know where all of that comes from, but they just know it's one of mom's things and don't mess with it. But I was able to sit down and actually play and interact with my daughter playing Barbies, and it was special. And her giggles and her laughter, it was just so fun. And we're doing it almost daily now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not sending you into a flashback.
No, I am uncomfortable at times, but I try to put my headspace in the right spot. And it ends up being, it's okay. Like I still have control. So
Because when you are in the moment, instead of allowing your mind to go into the past, you can focus on, I'm here right now, and this is what we're doing, and I'm an adult, and you're able to keep yourself grounded.
Yeah. So far I have done really well, and it's worth it. Like I'm so glad that I stepped out of my comfort zone for her sake and for my sake too. It's a beautiful moment,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's some other cool Not cool. I'll edit that out too. There's some other things happening in your life that I think are worthy of discussion. One being that over the past few years, other survivors from the same ring are starting to have the courage and confidence to come forward.
Yeah.
How does that impact you, if it does at all, when other survivors start to come forward and share their stories too?
Yeah. Well, let me back up first before I go into like the what's happening today stuff, because years ago, probably 5 years ago, I wrote my book. I wrote my story. And it was really not with the intention of publishing. I didn't know anything about publishing. I just simply wrote it for myself to get it out. And then fast forward 3.5 years, it felt right. Like God just kind of ordained one thing after another to where it was easily published and it was out there. But I had really no expectations of what would happen. I didn't, get on social media and say, hey, check out my book. I didn't do anything to promote it whatsoever. It was just there. And it took probably 5 months of hearing nothing, absolutely nothing. And all of a sudden, I see this post on Facebook where a girl just typed out, why is nobody talking about this? Like, me too. This coach did this, this, and this to me. Like, why is nobody saying anything about this book? And one person after another got on and said, I know, right? Me too. But I've been too scared to say anything. And it exploded from there, and I've been hearing from multiple people who have experiences with many of the perpetrators in my book. And it was like, I don't know. It was a miracle. It was something I never expected to happen. I knew there were others out there, but I also know the fear of coming forward it's intense, and everybody's in their own journey, and they have to decide when it's right for them, when it's right for their family. I mean, a lot of these survivors are thinking about their kids and what am I going to put them in if I come forward, like danger or just whatever. And it was just amazing to start to see these comments. But even still, there were some who messaged me privately, and I was able to see into their world a little bit, what went on with them with the same coach. And but they weren't ready to say anything publicly. They were scared. There's a lot of emotions. And then fast forward to today, I got word from one of those survivors, and she's ready. And the reason she's ready is because she found out that my coach, who had retired from teaching a couple years ago, is back teaching again. She's not sure if he's subbing or if he's part-time or what the deal is, but she got word that he is back in the classroom. And I don't know how to explain, like, not that I knew he was not probably hurting kids anymore or affecting kids or impacting kids when he retired. I mean, I knew people don't get over that type of sickness, but there was a sigh of relief when he retired. I had tried everything to get him fired, like not to get him fired, but to get people's eyes open to what he was doing in the classroom. And the end of his time teaching, they had changed his job to where he had to work from home, because there was enough people who had come forward that was what his title was switched to. But now he's back in the classroom, and it really just, like, my whole body went into shock, and still kind of is. And so it's just it blew my mind. I'm still processing it, I guess.
Did he go back to the same school?
I don't know yet. I've been messaging trying to figure out who and why do that? Why bring him into your school? But I don't have the answers to all that yet.
And I think part of the frustration, of course, is the fact that you have gone to the police and you have worked to get justice and you have done all the quote right things in order to document and come forward and tell your story, and there's still nothing on his record.
Nothing. So yeah, no background check would do you any good with him. And that's honestly the way it is with most perpetrators. But I don't know, like the whole reason I went to the police in the first place, the whole reason that my world got turned upside down in 2014 was because I knew kids weren't safe around him. And I mean, my whole world was shattered. And going forward is traumatizing and hard. And then it's thrown back at you with, it doesn't matter. We're going to put him around kids. We believe him. We believe he's safe. I don't get it.
And so for the other survivor, this was a last straw moment.
It was. We had found out that he was back in a church. He's leading worship. I believe his wife is a youth minister. And so he's around kids in that capacity. And for a while, I think they had him step down, but now he's back. And that was a kick in the gut as well, and infuriated her and I. But then I think this was kind of like, okay, this can't continue. This cannot happen to somebody else.
Well, and what's again, and I don't know that we'll have any answers for resolution for all of this, but it truly is an interesting discussion, because as a church or as a school, if you know about these allegations, so on one level, you're like, maybe they just don't know. But if they do know and they're choosing to risk their population, their community being injured by somebody, like at some point you go, it's not worth the risk at all. And so we have no idea what goes through the minds of these administrators, because even if he says it's not true, what if it is true? You're going to put your people at risk, period. And so it's shocking that, I mean, what do you think? Do you think they know and are just believing him when he says it's not true? Or do you think they just don't know?
As far as the church goes, they know. They 100% know. I mean, for one, they had him leave for a little bit and then brought him back. So they know. I know I believe one of the preachers is a really good friend of his, and he believes my coach doesn't believe he's done anything wrong.
Or he's a part of it. Like, that's the thing, you guys. I just don't think these people, I get so upset because I don't, if these serious allegations are being made about the same person, and these allegations are coming from 10s, 20s, 50, 100 women, you don't get to say, oh, that's not true, they're all lying. Like, that's not an okay defense.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean,
the other thing to consider is that these other men are also a part of the ring too, which I think is part of the long-term problem, is these guys aren't getting in trouble because there's people in their corner essentially who also partake.
Well, and I mean, I can't say, I don't know. I don't know if this guy is in the ring.
This is me just getting upset, you guys.
Right.
It's not factual, but it is
because, but it does make your mind begin to go to places like that without, we don't know the facts and we don't know his reasoning behind it. But what I have seen time and time again is, whether he's involved or not, it could even be a blackmail situation. Maybe there is something else that he has in his past that they all are protecting each other. I've seen it time and time again, and it oftentimes can even get that way in law enforcement. You have your really good law enforcement who get it, who believe you, but their hands are tied because of the string of all these other people involved with things they shouldn't be in, that their chief or whatever is protecting. And it leads to putting people at risk of being hurt again.
How much courage does it take for these survivors to come forward?
the the best way I can describe it is you're almost exposing your deepest wound to the world. Like you're saying, here, like take a hit at me. It's worth it because maybe he'll get caught, but you're going to get the life beat out of you in the process. That's how it feels. And that's how it's been for me. But you think it's going to be worth it. You know, somebody's going to get saved. Somebody's going to not be put at risk like I was in that situation. And you weigh your pros and your cons and your cost, and you figure at least somebody will get saved. And so yeah, the cost for a survivor is huge.
And you have to know that that's true, really, even in the midst of the battle of it, because word did get out in your town and people did get loud. And I think that's what it took, because if the police hands are tied and the schools' hands are tied and the churches' hands are tied and nobody's actually doing anything, it took the people getting loud and really saying, we are not standing up, like we are not allowing this in our community anymore. How did that impact, as much as you know, because you weren't living there at that time, from what I understand, how much did the people getting loud, survivors coming forward, really impact the situation?
It was almost like a social justice in a sense. Like it felt like, okay, at least I know when he steps out of his door, there's a group of people who live around him who know and who are not afraid to say, I mean, I've heard stories of people that, you know, he's walking near their house and they yell out, "Get off my property, you pedophile." And knowing those things, it gave me a strength because it was like, okay, me coming forward did help in some way, shape, or form. It was an encouragement for me.
And when the survivors band together,
Mm.
have you ever done an event with more than one of you guys where you all share stories, or has that not happened?
It's not happened. And I think everybody's cautious with how the correct way of doing everything, wanting to make sure we don't do anything to mess up if there was ever a case or whatever, however it should go. But I have thought about putting together, getting us all together, getting the whole community together, and me getting to be there and just experience that. I think it would be empowering.
Yeah. And I think for survivors out there who feel alone, just know that you sharing your voice, your story matters, because it does save another child. Even if you don't see it immediately, you are opening the eyes of parents, you're opening the eyes of teachers, you're opening the eyes of people who are now watching children a bit differently, saying, okay, something's changed. This girl's wearing sweatpants all summer long. What's happening? You know, this is, you know, and I think that that awareness is huge for a community.
It is. And I got to see those rewards in a way. Like I've heard from so many different people that even if it wasn't related to my coach, somebody was able to come forward and express what was done to them and healing was able to take place. And so stories like that, like, fuel my heart. It helps so much.
And I would say for every story you've been told, imagine 3 to 5 more people who had a similar situation because of reading your book or hearing your story, but never knew how to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my hope. That's my prayer. That was my whole reason for coming forward in the first place. And I think that's what people don't understand about survivors coming forward. It's not about, oh, I want to stick it to this guy, you know? Like it's you're wanting to save a child. It's about the children. It's about opening eyes of the community. And I just find it so, I don't know what the right word is, fascinating, intriguing, I don't know. But he can't stand to be out of the classroom and he can't stand to not be in leadership of the church. If I was somebody who has been accused by so many people, I wouldn't want to put myself in a position to make people decide safe or not safe, or I wouldn't want to be around kids. You know what I mean? Like, I would want to prove, like, that's not me. I don't need that. But he's purposefully needing to be in leadership and he's needing to be around kids. And I think that's a red flag.
Yeah. There are no words. And that's why, yeah, it's shocking. And it's shocking that other leaders, adults, are allowing it.
Yeah.
So it makes me want to be like, all right, who we gotta call?
Yeah.
Rally together.
Yeah.
And again, because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, like they don't know. But unfortunately, we've heard too many stories of adults, people who do know and still don't take action.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you navigating through these new emotions?
So I don't know. We live in a tiny house right now and we have obviously 4 kids. I'm married, have a dog. The place is crowded. And often what I do is I will find myself in the bathroom and sitting on the floor praying. And that's just kind of my place where I can shut the door, I can lock the door, and I can just have some time. And I'm getting messages from my husband as I'm sitting there, and he's like, "You're doing great. Like, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're healing, you're educating. Like, this is not your fault. You can't fix this." And I didn't respond right away. I was soaking it in. And so then I hear him on the outside of the door. "Did you get my message?" And I said, "I got it. And I agree with you, but my system is in shock right now. And I need to allow myself to feel that because I hurt. And I don't want to stuff that necessarily either. I want to allow myself the emotions of this feels like a defeat in a way. I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to allow myself to become completely overwhelmed with those thoughts, but recognizing it as not okay, I think is okay."
Mic drop. I mean, really, I think it's both and, it's saying this is not okay and this is upsetting and what can I do? But your husband's right too.
Yeah.
This is outside of your sphere of influence, really. And so focusing on what you can control, what you are doing, and what is in your circle of
Yeah.
influence. And I think when things happen that are outside of our control, it can feel defeating because there's nothing, quote, nothing we can do. And so controlling the controllables is helpful in those types of situations, meaning we still recorded this podcast. We are going to support the other survivor as much as we can. We are going to, there's things that we can do. And so instead of focusing on the things that we can't control, really working to take ownership of the things that you can.
Yeah. And you're right. It's out of my sphere of influence, but yet it doesn't mean it doesn't impact you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So controlling the controllables, focusing on I love what your husband said too, is you are already doing everything you can. And I think when a blow like this happens, it can be easy to think, what could I have done? Or could I have infected it somehow? But the answer is you're doing everything you can do.
Yeah. I do think it's not so much that I feel like I need to do more as much as it is, I feel a little bit frustrated at those who aren't paying attention, I guess. Because you can only do so much and you can only put yourself out there so much. And you hope that people listen. But it's out of my influence. And so one thing that I'm learning, like even with Stop SIS and with us working with these survivors, is it's not my job to fix anybody. I can give them the tools, I can give them what works, what ways to impact their healing. But again, it's in their hands. They get to decide what they're going to do with that. And I have to lay that down. I have to give that to God and say, same with this situation, like it has to be God's. And there's many times when blows like this come, and then I find a day or two later, God has done something miraculous, and things are better. But just trusting him in the process, the highs, the lows, the defeats, the victories, the frustrations, trusting that it's all within his hands and his plan, and trying to remain faithful during every bit of it. That is in my control.
That is in your control. Yeah, absolutely. So what we're really saying is, how do we live in a world that doesn't make sense? How do we live in a world that, we would, it feels like you're banging your head against a wall.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people, or a lot of situations, we can't make sense of evil. And so how do we not just survive, but thrive when life doesn't make sense sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, so the other day I was talking with Granny, and I was overwhelmed with something similar. It was another type of injustice or whatever, and just frustrated at the broken system, I think. And her comment to me was, are you focused on the broken system, or are you focused on helping other souls? Like, what is your primary perspective and focus? And when I change my focus of what is within my influence and my control, what is God calling me to do? Is God calling me to fix a broken system? No, he's not. I mean, but is he calling me to impact those around me, to be a good neighbor, to share when I need to share, and to give when I need to give? And yeah, he is. And when I am obedient to those things, I I feel like I'm thriving. When I am stuck on the injustices, the things outside of my control, then I feel like I'm just surviving.
Yeah. And then it feels like you're fighting Goliath or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when
Because
really,
that's God's to fight. That when I'm stepping outside of my battle.
yeah. Yeah, because we're able to really see, like, wait a minute, Stop SIS and 90-day U-turn and the groups that we're creating, like, survivors are healing. Survivors are getting their life back. Survivors are finding that control within their mind and not allowing monkey mind to take them all over the place. They're feeling a peace in their heart that they haven't felt in years. They're feeling a relit of their spark and going back to school or getting new jobs or finding ways to serve in their community that's exciting to them. They're telling their story for the first time. They're healing. And at the end of the day, no matter what happens, that is what you're being called to do.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
happening.
And
Yeah.
that's where you thrive. That's where you feel like you're thriving
Yeah,
versus
absolutely.
surviving.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know that we have an answer to all of this craziness, except to say that if you are in leadership at a church or at a school, I would say you need to know, period. That is your job to know. So not knowing isn't really getting you an out. It's your job to know as much as you can about your teachers that you're hiring. And if you do know and you're still choosing to allow people into your community who have been accused of being a wolf over and over and over again, then that's on you too. We said one time, evil is evil, but staying silent about evil is also evil. And so I think all of them are culpable, if that's the word, like in their nobody's ignorant or out of, they can't just say, well, I didn't know about that. Like that's not going to help you in this situation. It's not a good defense. So if you're in leadership, I would say, number one, take these accusations seriously. Number two, do not. There's a lot of other ways that someone can find work. Do not put them in a situation where there's even a question.
Right. Yep, because then you got to look in the eyes of these children,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to 100% know that you're putting them in a safe environment.
And if you're a survivor, know that you're sharing your story matters.
It does. And guys, like, yes, it's been extremely hard, and it feels like I'm exposing a wound after a wound after a wound, and I've been hit all different which ways. But when I hear of other survivors that it has impacted, it makes it so worth it. It really does. And I know, like, statistically, the number of survivors whose perpetrators has not seen justice is probably in the 90 percentile. Like, it just rarely happens. And that's another thing. Like, I feel like because my story is kind of now quieter and it's in the past, I think people are assuming that, oh, well, he must have been innocent because there was no justice. Well, I think it's like 6% of assault cases actually receive justice. 6%. So that means 94% of those who have actually been guilty don't see the justice. So take these accusations seriously.
All right. Well, control the controllables, focus on what is working, but give yourself the space to go in the bathroom and cry.
Yes.
Both and feel it, get mad, but then know that what you're doing is helping survivors all over the world. In fact, we've heard of people internationally who are survivors themselves, and they're like, I'm learning so much, and they want to be a part of it. So for all of us listening, when something happens that's a Goliath moment, hand that over to God, because he's the one that can truly move a mountain, especially when there's that collective agreement behind it.
Yep. And just know God's timing is perfect. And that is what I have to remind myself often is I know his perfect timing. I know how everything else has been orchestrated already perfectly. And I'm going to trust him in this process.
Amen. Well, next week we are going to have an interview, and I'm excited to share with you guys this story and what was done well and what could have been better when this situation was family situation was brought to light. So we'll have that interview. We got a couple more on the docket. And then we also have a new 90-day U-turn group that started up. In fact, we're running a couple groups right now. So definitely check out the link and join the waiting list if it's something you're interested in hearing more about. And we'll send you an email when the next group is getting started. And then if you are interested in supporting a survivor, we would so appreciate any donation through the GoFundMe link that's below. Every single dollar goes into educating those about trauma and trafficking and empowering survivors. That is STOPSIS mission, and that is exactly what everything we're doing goes to: this podcast, the Instagram, Facebook, and of course the programs that we run as well. So we would so appreciate a $25 donation, a $200 donation, whatever you've got. We appreciate it, and we'll let you know when the website is done so we can get reoccurring options as well.
Yeah, it's super exciting stuff.
All right. So anything you want to add before I end with our I declare?
Oh, I appreciate you guys letting me kind of brain dump, I guess. This is real life. It's not all sugar coated and cupcakes and butterflies, but community definitely helps.
Yeah. And one last question for you. If you would have heard about this 3 years ago, how would you have handled it?
It would have, I would have internalized it. I would have placed shame on myself. I would have put fault on myself. I would have put the fact that other kids are at risk on myself, and I would have carried that burden with me everywhere I went.
And so 3 years later, life is still happening, yet you are able to process it differently. And how does that help you be a mom and continue your mission?
Yeah, it reminds me which battles are mine and which are not. And it just makes me a little bit lighter. It's not to say that my brain's not like running 1,000 miles an hour, but at least I know it's not mine to control. And I'm working on laying down the things that I need to.
Yeah. And it is a couple times a day kind of reminder. Like, all right, this is not mine. I will do what I can, but Lord, this is on you. I'm giving this over to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I know he's going to make the best of it.
All right. Well, I am going to end with an I declare. So here we go. I think this one is perfect for today. I don't know if I've read it yet, but it's good for today. So I'm just going to read it.
Go for it.
Okay. I declare that God has a great plan for my life. He is directing my steps. And even though I may not always understand how, I know my situation is not a surprise to God. He works out every detail to my advantage. In his perfect timing, everything will turn out right. This is my declaration, and this is my declaration for you.
Love that.
Have an awesome day, you guys, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your school, your church, or on your podcast, then please email openblindeyes@protonmail.com. If you are interested in sponsoring a survivor on their healing journey and would like to donate to Stop SIS, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below, or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence, or you know somebody who is, whether they're dealing with a current trauma or one from the past, then we will always recommend that you reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.